If you've ever pulled into your driveway after a long day and just sat there for a minute before going inside, not because you had anywhere else to be, just because the quiet felt good. If you've built a whole small ritual around adjusting the seat, the mirrors, the temperature, before you even put the car in gear. If you used to ride and don't anymore, and it has nothing to do with losing your nerve. Welcome. This isn't about who's brave and who isn't. It's a completely different psychological calculation than most people realize. Or maybe you know someone like this. The friend who sings badly in the car with the windows up and would never do it anywhere else. The parent who traded the motorcycle for a hatchback the year the first car seat showed up in the back. The coworker who admits, a little sheepishly, that the drive home is the only 20 minutes of the day nobody needs anything from them. Here's the first thing worth understanding, and it has nothing to do with excitement or courage. A motorcycle asks you to constantly track dozens of small things at once. Road surface, gravel, crosswinds, painted lines, your own body position, the driver 2 cars ahead who might not have seen you. A car quietly absorbs most of that. Psychologists call this cognitive load, and for a lot of people, choosing a car isn't choosing boredom over adventure. It's choosing to hand off a stack of constant micro-decisions so their mind has room left over for everything else the day requires. There's a quieter reason too. One that has nothing to do with roads at all. On a motorcycle, everyone can see you, your face, your reactions, the moment you nearly miss a turn. Inside a car, you're partially hidden, and psychologists describe this as a kind of social shield. People sing badly with the windows up, rehearse hard conversations out loud, cry in a parking lot before walking into a building composed. That enclosed space doesn't just block weather. It blocks the feeling of being watched, which for a lot of people is its own kind of relief. Here's the uncomfortable part, and it cuts the other direction from what most car owners assume. Drivers routinely underestimate how much active mental work safe riding actually takes. Researchers studying human factors have found experienced riders are constantly scanning mirrors, intersections, tire grip, escape routes, and the unpredictable behavior of everyone around them, all at once, all the time. The feeling of ease inside a car isn't really evidence that driving is inherently safer. A lot of it comes from something psychologists have found again and again, that glass, doors, airbags, and a roof create a powerful sense of protection that often runs ahead of the actual statistics. The safety a car provides is real. The feeling of safety runs even bigger than that, because enclosure itself does something to the nervous system that has very little to do with math. That same instinct shows up in how people judge vehicles against each other, not just vehicles against motorcycles. Studies on car buying consistently find people perceive heavier vehicles as safer, which is part of why SUVs get chosen so often for feelings of safety and visibility, even by people who will never once take one off pavement. And weather plays its own quiet role in all of this. Rain, wind, heat, dust, none of it is really about avoiding adventure. It's about humans generally preferring environments they can control over ones they can't. And a sealed cabin controls a lot more of the outside world than an open one ever will. So why does that enclosure feel so good to begin with? Because it's tapping into something a lot older than cars, older than roads, older than any vehicle humans have ever built. Long before anyone worried about horsepower or lane position, humans were already organizing their lives around walls, roofs, fire, shelter, some kind of boundary between themselves and an unpredictable outside world. A car activates that same ancient preference, moving through the world while staying inside something that can be closed, controlled, and trusted not to change on you. That's not a modern invention. It's one of the oldest comforts humans have ever chased, just wearing a different shape now. Now here's the part almost nobody says out loud. And it's the twist that explains a lot of quiet, complicated feelings for people who used to ride and don't anymore. Becoming a parent measurably changes how people evaluate risk. This isn't about motorcycles losing their appeal, or someone getting soft. Research on risk perception consistently finds that once someone is responsible for a dependent, the same activity that used to feel thrilling gets recalculated through an entirely different lens. Not is this fun. But what happens to someone else if this goes wrong? For a lot of former riders, the bike didn't become less enjoyable. The math around what they were willing to risk simply changed, and no amount of loving the wind or the open road cancels out that shift once it happens. That's not a loss of nerve. It's a completely different and completely rational set of priorities taking over. There's a much quieter force at work too, one that has nothing to do with fear at all. A huge number of people never actually choose a car over a motorcycle in any deliberate sense. Behavioral economists call this the default effect, and cars are simply the cultural default almost everywhere. The option nobody has to justify picking. Add to that the fact that cars quietly become an extension of someone's home, personalized with scents, playlists, seat settings, a specific spot for sunglasses, and you get a space that starts to feel less like transportation and more like a small, movable room that happens to have wheels. Environmental psychologists even describe the commute itself as a kind of transition zone, the 20 minutes where someone mentally shifts from employee back into parent, or from one identity into the next, alone, with the door closed. None of this means everyone drawn to cars shares one personality, and it's worth being honest about that. Psychologists measure something called sensation seeking, and people land all over that spectrum for reasons that have nothing to do with character. Some genuinely thrive on higher stimulation. Others are just as psychologically healthy running on lower stimulation and gravitate naturally toward the familiar over the unpredictable. Preferring a quiet cabin over open air isn't a smaller way to move through the world. It's a different set of values entirely. Comfort, privacy, control, predictability, all things a motorcycle was never really built to offer, and never claimed to be. That preference for control shows up in smaller ways too, ways that have nothing to do with fear. A lot of owners keep a small emergency kit in the trunk, a blanket, a phone charger, an umbrella, water, things they'll probably never need but like knowing are there. Consumer researchers have documented real emotional attachment to specific cars as well. People who name them, mark anniversaries with them, keep one for decades past its practical lifespan. None of that comes from thinking of a car as just a box that moves. It comes from a vehicle slowly becoming something closer to a small, dependable extension of home. The same instinct, in a different shape, that once had humans building walls and roofs instead of engines and airbags. That's probably the honest bottom line here. A motorcycle exposes you to the world. A car filters it. Neither instinct is the correct one. They're just two different answers to the same very old question every human has been asking since the first roof went up. How much of the world do I want between me and everything else while I'm moving through it? Subscribe and watch this video next.